Maybe what I'll do is just put a few of these books out.
Yeah.
People want it.
Yeah. Okay.
You have some different ones than the ones that.
Grabbing a couple of them.
Maryland Powers put a whole bunch out there too.
I'm just curious, is that like at all distracting to you? Because I could just minimize the window and then you would
Oh,
not
I
know.
will.
Yeah, and you know, you already saw that Maryland's put a whole bunch out like 2 weeks ago, right? She's the reader. Well, I was kind of thinking about you guys yesterday. I was going through the directory, just getting ready to do a new one. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We're doing great. Almost 2 years. Oh my God.
I have to use the restroom, but I'm more than willing to help with anything
Oh,
you
I
need.
think I'm just about ready. I just need my cell phone and
Your mom was like, she's just doing that and this, and then she's gonna piece it together. I'm like blown away. I'm like, it's like a piece of cake.
I had to write it all down. Like steps.
This is amazing.
That was my favorite.
Yeah, so this was really spontaneous. We drove through. So I'm just like, what did he say? I said, if I do this plan, I'm gonna make it right on your just so I don't make that mistake. I love it. Early October, and they it was like snowing here. But it was nice and pretty nice in Venice.
Oh, yeah, it was nice a few days and it rained a few days.
Did it rain? Yeah. When it rains, it's like so hard because then you have to like walk on boards.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to do it at St. Louis.
You're doing something with that.
Everything that hurts. Well, they were pumping.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is an important thing.
It's, yeah, they have, it's more than ever. More than ever. It's just holding the water back.
Oh.
See how that, yeah. And then it's.
It's,
It's in the dog.
yeah, just showing you.
Oh, then your GPS. He's just doing it.
I love it.
Right. He appeared in the queue. I know, I was just on Maryland walking in with quilts and I was like, house, did we forget?
We have a litter of kids at the big girl's house. My gosh, your kids, they'll probably get their eyes open this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're hanging on to our season. And also today I was supposed to be decorating for Advent in there. I think we're gonna put that in Advent. I've got some new stars, so we're not hanging them today. I'll hang them right over. I just got my mom's party this year. Yeah. At 12:45 to 3. We'll have all the people here. It's just like choir practices. It's like I don't get to eat. They're all eating it, but I've got choir, so I know Eduardo is coming, right? Yeah, it's hard now. That's okay. Recheck in with him. Check in with him. Oh.
Okay. All good?
Okay.
Yeah?
Alright.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good. Look at this beautiful setup. I'm like,
No, it really is. It's a piece for the eyes.
This is one that is like totally making me rethink my
Yeah.
keto lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You
that
see a
looks
spread
really,
of breads.
really good, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
great place for it. I've not been going to it for the last like 3 weeks, and I put on 5 pounds that quick. That quick. I said, just stop being lazy, just, you know, I know lazy. Don't buy the food. Exactly. Make that time, yeah, it was like, make the food.
I can find a reason not to go every day.
Or I can go back on the outside.
Exactly.
And I'll just eat the toppings.
Oh.
I never do. Because I never do. Because I like that crunchy thing crust, you So, yeah, I decided, after waking up, like, why am I waking up congested? I decided, well, or did you do all of why am I waking up congested? Like, have all chickens, and they go back on.
So like the
I made one, I made one, I always,
any other
casserole thing, I always make something that I know I can eat. We'll get there, I know directing traffic is not my strong suit. And I have all these great recipes, I like really great cookies and sushi and things like that, but that's awesome.
Well, you better start making it.
I know, I actually. And also it's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, an egg doesn't need
Exactly, yeah.
maybe it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Then you gotta prioritize.
How you doing? Is it on?
No, we're announcing it today. We're having more than one drink. Yes, and so we're gonna put the right, because that side is just started, you know? And then I've got new, today we're changing the curtains to blue. For like, our Thanksgiving is super small, it's just Jen, me, and Brad, so I'm just like, oh, and none of us eat, we all eat different things, you know, we just kind of bring the things that we're gonna eat, you know? And she says, I think it's just that I have to get your so, she's like, so I'll have to meet stuff, and I'll just give you salad. So I was like, yeah, so it's really small, but it's early in the day. So I can come over that afternoon and like hang up and I got that. So if you have a box of I can do that. So instead of one all words, all yeah, they're like 9 by myself. You're 9 they're 9.5. And the blue curtains are more sheer. Yeah, blue are more sheer, you know, than all the rest of them, so I think
Can I have everyone's attention, please? Thank you, welcome, we're so happy to have you. We're gonna ask everybody to get their food and have a seat. We'll say grace after you're eating so your food stays warm. And it's a huge favor in the spirit of we've got a lot going on during church and after the day. When you're done eating, there's a big, hey, Nancy, go stand by that trade that cart.
The cart right there.
Where Nancy's standing, there's a garbage can in front of it. Scoop your leftover stuff you didn't eat and your napkin into that garbage, put your silverware in that bin, and put your dishes on that cart. So all we have to do is roll it quietly into the kitchen and shut the door so we don't interrupt anybody. We will not do dishes during church, but we really need your help on that part. Thank you. All right, please.
Thanks,
All right,
Jackie.
let's do it. Thank you.
Well, I'm diving in.
Is my sound going directly into that?
No, your sound will go through the speakers into there, so yeah, we can sound, yeah.
I was curious about how different churches are.
Oh, I know, it's always, yeah.
I did.
Morning. Here, David, you want to jump the line here? You gonna go? You're just gonna go with coffee. That's good. All right. No, gotcha. It's hard to do. My water bottle. No, it's okay.
And I was, because you're pretty small,
I did. We find it last June, Tom said. We gotta get that replaced.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I thought Connie was here that I wasn't coming on Tuesday. She didn't seem to remember. I told her.
Yeah, I know you sounded surprised when I called. Yeah, but,
Sometimes I wonder if she hears what you tell her.
How are you on, David? Oh, okay.
I'm not a fan of this.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's not your fault. You're just all of a sudden like,
I know, it's like, yeah, so. It's going live stream to YouTube. I think. No one will see, like, you know, it's, yeah, our channel is small.
I'm like, I don't like that.
Are we live?
Yeah, my plan is to hopefully upload like a better video from this.
Yeah, they're getting.
Backup plan.
So here's our tray. I'm gonna eat it.
There we go. Perfect.
It's like back to the old days.
I know.
It's okay.
I'm triggered.
Yeah.
Are any of these vegetarian?
Back and forth so much now.
I walk by without a plate.
Pam, do you know if these are vegetarian by any chance? Any vegetarian ones? No? Alright.
Probably gonna join us tonight. Let's go to the grace.
Are we sure that
No, I was. We haven't talked about it.
Where is Mel?
We're gonna be there.
Mel, is this?
There's transportation available.
Okay, is there some special speaking tonight?
It's well, it's Spirit Grace, but
I know what it's about.
it's about children of couples.
Oh, okay.
Children of queer couples
They look good.
is the topic.
Well, they're always fun to go there,
Yeah.
and you learn something.
I just don't want to find out later. What? I just don't want to find out later.
I didn't make it, but I baked it.
Yeah, that'd be bad. That's not enough, forget that. Right now?
Or it might be
No.
this one.
I think I'll take.
Not right now, you want
We're supposed to take trays on so that we can have place for your coffee and other.
Yeah.
I'll need help doing dishes afterwards, and you and I, we knock it dead in the kitchen, so.
I'm just gonna sneak through.
I just plenty of
One more time. I'll go behind you this time. Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm gonna okay. So yeah, so it should be more established.
I made this one, and this.
Yeah, it's already.
Pam made this. Get a lot of hash browns and sausage. No, this has spinach in it. This has hash browns and Colby Jack cheese and red pepper and green pepper and onion. And then it looks like this one has onion and ham. Yeah.
And I don't know if they're super well, but like they're out.
Pretty long line.
Just take the whole thing and just don't eat what you don't want. How's that? So it's appetizing. You're fine. It's perfect. You're perfect. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm going to, bring a couple of big,
Oh, yeah.
bags of roasted beef. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna carry those. So, that's my thought. Yeah, we'll do that.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
I do know where you live. And I know
Well,
and I know golf.
Sure do appreciate that. Yeah, fortunately, you didn't collide with the gate. I thought you were
I know.
Oh, no, back up. It could scratch your car a little bit.
Well, I don't need that.
So it's like, so people come in and say, oh, you heard this, or I really like this song.
Wow.
I guess it's like without it. I love these guys, you know, whatever. My hands are really promised to be fun, so I take all suggestions and check them out.
All these last minute instructions here, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one has Jimmy Dean sausage, hash browns, onion, green pepper, red pepper, and eggs and cheese.
Which is the least spicy?
There's nothing. Probably this one. No, I would say this one or this one would probably. Are you into onions? Do this one. That's going to be the very least in spice.
Okay.
This one is spinach, red bell pepper,
I gotta put it on a plate.
and cheddar cheese and sausage.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
There's no like potatoes or anything like that.
Okay.
So
Hi, Dawn.
Good morning. I like your apron.
I do too. I needed a new apron like a hole in my head, but I loved it, so I just got it.
Yeah,
Because that's what you do, right? Yeah. Hi, Robert.
Good morning, Jackie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Good.
Good.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Good morning.
No, I'm gonna hold off a little bit and see how everything's going with this, and then maybe I'll sneaky grab.
Good.
Good morning, providers. Thank you. This is amazing.
But there's no rhubarb. It made me
Aggressive for breakfast, though, huh? So aesthetic.
Yeah. Dad and I have a mutual love for rhubarb.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
I saw a rhubarb braised.
I like it mixed, like rhubarb strawberry.
Yeah, something sweet.
Jim just used the word rhubarb.
Oh, yeah, it's too much. Yeah. It's a polarizer.
Well, you either usually really like it or you really don't.
Yeah, I think so. No,
Alright, I was thinking Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is his girlfriend coming?
I wish, I don't think so this time, but, yeah.
Attention.
No. You got it.
There we go. Good morning, let's pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather in your name. We thank you for this food set before us. We thank you for all those who brought it from the land to our table this morning. We ask you to bless this food to our bodies. We ask you to bless our conversations. May we have open hearts and open minds and come to each other with a spirit of curiosity, trusting that you are here present with us throughout all of it. All these things, Lord, and whatever else you know that we need, we lift up to you now in Jesus' loving name.
Amen.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to just say this now to get it out of the way. I brought some books. Now, I would love to tell you that I read all of them. I'm a slow reader. I did not read all of them. I have referenced several of them and hope to get to some of them, but they're all books that have helped me learn more about my LGBTQ siblings, and especially as their lives connect to faith and spirituality. So I'm going to refer to a couple of them a little bit later on, maybe during the question and answers, but I just want you to know what I've learned to do, and you probably do this too, is I just get my phone out and I take pictures of covers so that I remember to go find them at the library or bookstore, or however you get your books. So just want you to know those are there, yeah, please take advantage of that if you would like. All right. So I think I'm going to begin by just introducing myself. I know that you've already been told that I'm coming, but I want to tell you who I am and also give you a little bit of my credentials, I guess I would say. Not in a way of like trying to like, oh, look what I've done, but just to kind of give you a sense of the context in which I have been working and doing ministry and living that brings me to you today, right? So as you all know, my name is Pastor David Eppelsheimer, and a lot of people have a problem with the pronunciation, and I will answer to anything. But if you want to know, if you put a slash between the S and the H, Eppelsheimer, then that's easier to remember. But again, you can call me whatever, and I will answer, okay? All right, and I won't be offended. And you'll hear this again when in worship, but I just want you to know that I bring you greetings from Bishop Laurie Larson Caesar of the Oregon Synod, and everyone from the Synod's, the Bishop's staff at the Oregon Synod office, of which I am the newest member. I just began my work with Bishop's staff on November 1st. So today is day 24 of what I like to think of as a fire hose flow of information and learning that has been coming at me. So if I sound a little scattered, I'm going to blame it on that. But I also just want to say how thankful I am to be doing that work and to be doing it with a gracious and awesome group of folks that I respect and admire, who have been walking with congregations throughout the Synod for the last 5+ years. And so I'm just very excited to be part of that and to be with you all today. Prior to that, I served as a pastor for 13 years out in Hillsboro at Community of Christ Church. And prior to that, I served 2 congregations in North Dakota, 2.5 years in Jamestown and 6.5 years in Grand Forks. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about my experience, especially in Jamestown and Grand Forks, around this topic today. And then prior to that, I was in seminary at Berkeley, in Berkeley, PLTS in Berkeley. And I kind of a second career guy, I guess you would say, although I'm not sure what I did before counts as a career. But I graduated from seminary just before I turned 40. So I've been doing this work for about 22 years. Okay, and then I also want to tell you that at my time here in Hillsborough, I had the good fortune of connecting with folks through some community organizing efforts, with some folks that came together and formed the Westside Queer Resource Center in Washington County. There was a recognition that if folks in the queer community wanted to go somewhere for support and community, they had to come to Portland, and particularly the Q Center in North Portland. And I don't know if you all experienced this in Canby, but out in Hillsborough, Portland's like another country. I mean, it really, like, people are out in that area for a reason. They don't want to go to Portland for their community, maybe for a nice meal or a show or whatever, but they're not gonna like be hanging out there a lot. And so we recognized that there was a need in Washington County. So I am proud to be a founding member of that board. I currently have emeritus status. I stepped away just because of a lot of other stuff going on in my life and ministry, but very proud of that effort. We were virtual because we formed right before the pandemic. I'm happy to say about a year and a half ago, they actually have a space in Hillsborough, an actual physical location. So anyway, there's that. I also want to tell you that I have been part of a team made up of folks from Spirit of Grace in Beaverton, Shepherd of the Valley in Beaverton, and our congregation in Hillsborough Community of Christ Church that was called the Rainbow Faith Alliance. The Rainbow Faith Alliance was formed as sort of a sibling movement or event connected to Queer Grace gatherings at Spirit of Grace in Beaverton. Queer Grace gatherings in Beaverton are a monthly gathering on a Sunday evening where somebody in the LGBTQ community shares their story of their life and how it intersects with their faith and their spirituality. Then those folks bring a panel of friends and colleagues with them to, after they share their story, to maybe ask questions that will get them to go a little deeper into that story. And then it's opened up to whoever comes. It's kind of it's much like this, round tables, coffee house conversation, and it's a wonderful time of learning. A couple of friends and colleagues of mine looked at that and said, this is wonderful, and also not everyone will walk into a space that's called Queer Grace Gatherings. There are folks who have been brought up in the church who have been told most of their lives that it's not okay to be LGBTQ in the church, but they maybe have family or friends or have understood themselves to be LGBTQ and wondering how that all fits. And so this is an opportunity for allies to come and share their stories of what it means to be allies. So we're trying, the Rainbow Faith Alliance was an attempt for, instead of putting a gay or lesbian person or transgender person up in front of a bunch of straight people who might have cringy, awkward questions, gives them a chance to ask those questions in a safer space with other allies, so that allies are teaching each other how to be better allies. So that's another thing that has been going on. We took it on the road several months ago now in St. Mark's and Salem, and then Christ the King and Tigard. And it's on a bit of a hiatus right now. And in fact, with my new work with the Synod, I'm probably going to step away from that team, but that has been. But I wanted you to know some of the things that I've been involved with along the way that have led me here. Any questions at that point? Anything that I've said that you have a question about? Okay, oh yes. Okay.
Is it similar to the Q Center at ESU, or is that around still?
That's a great question. There are some Q Centers in different, like there's even one at PCC in Rock Creek and the PSU, so I think similar, yeah. I mean, it's really a place for community. and to offer resources and advocacy. So it's yeah, it is a similar kind of organization. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah. All right. I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here. I grew up at Westland Lutheran Church. I never heard from the pulpit that it was wrong to be gay or lesbian or transgender. To be honest, back in those days, we wouldn't have understood the word transgender, right? It wasn't a word really. I never heard anything against those folks. But here's the deal. I didn't hear anything affirming or welcoming or celebrating either. It was silence. And so in that silence, my understanding of my LGBTQ siblings came from the culture around me and what you sort of heard in the ether and around you and as a kid from friends, right? So I come to you today to tell you that growing up, I didn't have any personal thing against anybody LGBTQ. But if I'm honest, I think in my heart of hearts, I thought maybe God doesn't love everything about them, right? Because that was in the ether, that was in, and there was no counter message from my church, which wasn't uncommon back then for many churches, but nevertheless, silence. So I went to seminary in my 30s, not really knowing where I stood. I almost spilled my coffee. Not really knowing where I stood on this issue, right? And for me at that point, it kind of was just an issue. But fortunately, through my time in seminary, I made friends with a variety of different folks. Some of them who came out to me. I'm sort of ashamed to admit that the first friend who came out to me, my response was, thank you for sharing that. I have to be honest, I'm not sure what to do with that right now. Not exactly the most supportive response one might hope to receive when being that vulnerable with a friend. But as often the case in our faith formation and in our lives together, we are changed less by information and data than by story and relationship. So as I got to know friends who came out or who had come out before they came to seminary, and I understood them to be solid, faithful, gifted, amazing human beings, I had to wrestle with what I had sort of just picked up from the culture around me about how much God loves our LGBTQ siblings. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah. That was bolstered by good biblical scholarship from our professors who helped me look at the scriptures differently, look at them in context, look at them in historical context in terms of who they were speaking to and what they were speaking about, to help me understand that it wasn't so cut and dried about what the Bible might or might not say about our LGBTQ siblings. I left seminary and my first 2 calls were in North Dakota. We loved North Dakota, to our surprise. Because I'm just gonna say, and gosh, I hope this doesn't get back to any of my friends in North Dakota. When you're in seminary and you're going through the where am I gonna get assigned for my first call? A lot of people would say, I don't know, but I hope it's not North Dakota. So we ended up in North Dakota. And it was challenging in some ways, but lovely in others. It was lovely in terms of the people. It's challenging in terms of the flat landscape. We used to say we could watch our dog run away for 3 days. And the cold temperatures. temperatures. Especially when we got 2 Siberian Huskies who needed to be outside when I'm completely covered from head to toe so that I don't get frostbite in the 20 below weather while they're jumping through snowdrifts like it's normal water, right? So, anyway. But one of the things that I found challenging, especially in our first call in Jamestown, was a small town, lovely people, but I remember my daughter coming home from school, and she told me, she said, my friends were talking about somebody and they were trying to insult them. They were, you know, how kids can be, right? They were saying something negative, and they said, that's so gay. That's so gay. And it was meant to be a derogatory word. And Kirsten, my oldest daughter, who's now 37 and actually flying out on Wednesday to be with us for Thanksgiving with her husband, so I can't wait, they live in Minneapolis. She came home and she said, I spoke up and I said, why are you saying that? That's not okay. That's not a bad word. I'm proud of her for doing that. She's always, both of my daughters have been people who speak up. Probably quicker to speak up than I have been in my life, and have taught me a lot. But it was the response. The response was, wait a minute, isn't your dad a pastor? So the connection was, if your dad's a pastor, then you know better. Gay is bad. If you're a Christian, if you're a person of faith, if you're a pastor, gay is bad. That hit me over the head, like, oh my goodness, like this is out there. I mean, I think I knew it, but I hadn't had any reason to give it a lot of thought, to be honest. Just sort of went about my business. And now here it was, right? We moved to Grand Forks, but my daughters held on to some of their friendships with kids in Jamestown. And one day, our same daughter, Kirsten, came to me and said, can my friend come stay with us? He came out to his parents, and he can't stay there anymore. So he moved in with us for a few days. And I found myself sitting in my living room with his parents, who came to pick him up, having a conversation about why I was advocating for him, why I was not condemning him, why I believed that he was a beloved child of God, just as he is, and not if he changes. So again, those were some of the formational stories in North Dakota that led me to this day. I was in Grand Forks in 2009 when our church-wide assembly voted on the sexuality statement and voted to, among other things, ordain folks who are in same-sex relationships, right? And we didn't talk about it much from the pulpit, because we knew that could divide our congregation. We talked about it sort of a roundabout. I'm not proud of that, but that was sort of the ethos at the time. Okay. Then we came out to Oregon. And I started serving the congregation in Hillsboro. And again, I didn't lead with that. I didn't lead with that, like, I want you to know where I stand on this. I'm not proud of that, but I also think if I had, they might have said, oh, we don't want to call him. And so it gave me the opportunity to get to know them and to build trust and to be able to have those conversations. About 3 or 4 years into my time with them, I started to get phone calls from people who were like, oh, I'm looking at your church on the website, and it looks interesting to me. And we live in the area, we've just moved in the area, we'd like to go. But some variation of I am gay or my child is gay, will we be welcome? And And that's when I realized that my only honest and answer with integrity was, well, as far as I'm concerned, I will welcome you with open arms. But I can't speak to how my congregation will welcome you. I know some that will, but others I'm not so sure. I got enough of those phone calls that I went to our council and I said, look, I'm getting these phone calls, what do you all think? And they thought about it, and they sort of said, well, let's talk about it some more, let's talk about it some more before we do anything. But then I started to get emails and phone calls from people kind of from the sidelines saying, I'm so glad you said what you said. I didn't know where you stood. I want us to be an affirming and welcoming congregation. So I began to connect those people with each other. Hey, you should talk to so-and-so. They talked together. Started to see that group grow, and then that group came together eventually to have some conversations. There was a pastor in our synod at the time who was the pastor of the Flame, Leo Bancroft. Invited him to come out, a transgender pastor, to come out, and also was working with Reconciling Works, and asked him to come out and talk to our people. And he gave a great presentation. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I'm gonna back up. Before that happened, 2016, in June, the Pulse nightclub shootings happened. Remember that?
Yeah.
June of 2016. I was talking to my colleague and friend Matthew Egan, who was the pastor at Calvary Lutheran. We were the 2 Lutheran pastors in Hillsborough. I'm sitting in his office, and he says, shouldn't we do something? Shouldn't we have a vigil or something? I said, yeah, that's a great idea, we should do that. About that time, his administrative assistant calls from the other room, hey, somebody's already doing something at the Hillsborough Civic Center. They're already doing it on this, like in a couple nights from here. Turned out to be a couple of queer Latino men who were doing this work, young guys, and we reached out to them on Facebook, on Messenger. And we said, hey, we're a couple of Lutheran pastors, and we'd like to come and participate in your vigil. What do you think about that? And their response was, you can come, but don't make it too churchy. And then they said, do you know where we can get candles? Do you know where to get candles? Little tip for you all. The candles you use on Christmas Eve, not good vigil candles. They burn too quickly. Just a tip, right? They go too quickly, so don't bring those to the vigil. We did. Fortunately, we had extras. We showed up at this vigil. We didn't have a speaking part, we just were there. We wore our collars to show that we were people of faith. People from our congregations came. Not a lot, but a few. But here's the thing I want to tell you about that night, is people were in a circle. And the 2, Angel and Edberto were the 2 that spoke. And then they opened it up for anybody who wanted to share anything. And I started to hear over and over again people who said, I don't feel like I can be fully who I am in the town in which I live. I don't feel like I can truly be myself in Hillsborough. I can with my friends, I can in other situations, I can when I go into Portland, but I can't right here. And I had no idea. I wasn't aware, why would I know that? I wasn't aware of that, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I came back to the congregation, and the next Sunday I preached, and I said, look, these are people who feel isolated, who feel unloved, and we all need to find ways to show up for them. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'll tell you the first thing is that I'm going to go to Portland Pride, and I invite you all to come. Nobody came. But I had a blast. I went down and joined all of my Lutheran colleagues who were part of RIC congregations and marched with them, and it was a beautiful time. The next year, after Leo came, that's why I got it out of order, Leo actually asked, we could use a van for some of our people who are less mobile. One of our people in our congregation said, we have a van. So I show up at the Portland Pride that morning and by the way, doing worship in Hillsborough and then rushing down to Portland in time for Pride, that's a bit of a feat, but we managed it. And their van was already decked out and decorated and ready to go, and we had people, and then each year more people came. Eventually, we started the RIC process, which of course is what you all asked me to talk about, and I'm telling you more background. It was a slow process, you know? It started out with a lot of one-to-one conversations between folks who knew that they were in favor of doing this and wanted to gain some support and know that they weren't alone in this. But it took about 2 or 3 years before we officially formed an RIC team that was blessed by our council and began to advertise and invite folks to come. And we actually became a Reconciling in Christ congregation in the middle of the pandemic after we had sold our building, so we had no door to put the sticker on. And we tried to, and they, all through that time, they wrote their welcome statement. I was in the background as a cheerleader and a source and a resource for them, but I did not run that team. I was directly involved in that work. And one of the things that I will just say before I stop for questions is, I was so pleased to hear this team say to me and to the council and to the congregation and to each other, we know that once we become RIC, it's not a one and done. That's the first step in an ongoing process to figure out what we're going to do about it, how we are going to show that we are welcoming and affirming and celebrating folks. And so we should talk a little bit about what that looks like, right? And I've already had a great conversation with Guy and with Pastor Michelle, so I know that you all are doing some of that work, but I'd like to hear more about that. But I'm going to pause for a moment to see if you have any questions at this point. Or any thoughts. Yes?
I'd like to hear about continued efforts, and I apologize for coming in late to your presentation.
No worries.
Ways to get involved in continued efforts.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that, Pastor?
Yes. So if I'm correct, what you're asking is what do those continued efforts look like after a congregation becomes reconciled in Christ?
Yeah, what are some continued efforts?
Yeah.
I know for me, I'd love to see where it includes people with disabilities and also like different minority groups, so it's an across the board welcome, because I'm a member of some of those other groups, and I know for me it is also lonely. And I'd love to see where we're just fully embracing equity, because if we do it one at a time, how many years go by before everybody gets that welcome?
Right.
But I love the fact that you're doing that, and I'm just really proud of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we're talking about intersectionality, right? We're talking about the ways that we inhabit several different communities, right? I'm talking away from the mic, I apologize. Okay. So let me speak first to the idea of how we bring those different groups together. There's no easy formula for that. It's about building relationships and trust. We have a saying in the Bishop's Office of the Oregon Synod. Your pastor, I'm sure, has heard us say it. I'm getting to know it and really appreciate it. I don't actually know who originated it, but it goes like this. Change is built at the speed of trust. Change is built at the speed of trust. Trust is built at the speed of relationship. Okay? So it isn't like we put the sticker on the door, we hang the flag, we say a few words in worship from the pulpit or whatever, and people just flock to the door and we're now welcoming, right? There are things that need to happen, and it really comes down to conversations. It really comes down to getting to know your neighbor. It comes down to being vulnerable with each other, sharing what matters to you across those different groups. So there's not so you all know better than I do where you connect with those groups, right? And you might know somebody who is in the queer community and somebody who is in the disability community, and you realize that, oh, those two people need to talk, right? We need to get them together, we need to introduce them and facilitate conversation, right? So I'm sorry to tell you that's slow and messy work, but it's beautiful work. Because you're making new friends along the way. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is just, and I imagine that you're doing this. Actually, before I do that, I'd just like to tell me some of the things. I heard that you all are presence at Pride tell me more about that. Who wants to tell me? Yes, Di.
Yeah, we've tried to be supportive of the Pride community at the
Why would
Pride.
you go to the microphone
Oh,
so
yeah.
that the recording will hear everyone, please?
We have attended the Pride events the last few years. We've had a booth. We've taken items from our church to hand out and had wonderful conversations with people. But the most recent thing that's happened is that we've connected with Christy Smith, who's the founder of the Pride Committee, or Canby Pride, I guess, and offered any help that we can give to them. And she wonderfully has called upon us to do that, and we hosted a political event that they were hosting. They did here for the mayor or for the city councilor, people who were really running for city council. I think that was a good experience for us. And then just this last week, she was making a presentation to the city council about the
Transgender Day of Remembrance.
Day of Remembrance, thank you. And several of us went down there and supported them in that and took part in the vigil. So I think that's one way we're making connections with other people in town.
Absolutely. Thank you, Di. Yeah, those kinds of things are so important. I would say too, that as you show up to these things and as you have conversations with folks, you might just ask them, like, where are you feeling some isolation? Or where are you feeling some pressures? Where are you feeling that maybe you can't fully be yourself in the community? It might be my child is being bullied in school and the teachers aren't doing anything about it. I'm not saying that happens here, I'm just saying those are the kinds of things that okay, all right. So then it's like, well, how do we show up at school board meetings and advocate for our kids, right? It's those kinds of things. And I know that, I'm getting to know you, but I don't know the culture, but I will say that I do know that overall, in a lot of churches, there's a bit of a hesitation for churches to get involved in what they think might be political things, right? I would say absolutely, churches shouldn't be partisan, but we all live in the polis, which is the Greek word for the city. So you all are political whether you like it or not.
Yep.
Our lives are political, right? It just means, politics is about how we interact with each other, how we live together well, right? And yeah, it can definitely turn into partisan divisions and that kind of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how do we live well together. And that sometimes means showing up at a city council meeting and speaking up. Sometimes that means showing up at a school board meeting and speaking up. And I will say that's something that happened in Hillsborough. The school board of Hillsborough School District adopted a comprehensive health and sexuality curriculum that dared to acknowledge the existence of gay and lesbian and transgender kids in the school and address those needs. And there were people who were in an uproar. And so it's so much so that they had to move the school board meeting from the administration building to one of the auditoriums of one of the high schools to accommodate all the folks who spoke in favor and against that comprehensive sexuality education. I'm happy to say that they adopted it because enough people showed up to say this is important. And I will also say that enough of us showed up from faith communities, pastors wearing their collars and being with their folks, who gave another narrative than the dominant Christian narrative out there, which tends to be anti-LGBTQ folks, right? So those are some of the ways. I will also say in terms of your building, I haven't had a chance to look around a lot. Are you thinking about how you might have an all-gender restroom?
Yeah.
And are you thinking about signage that is welcoming not only to LGBTQ folks, but to folks with disabilities, with sight impaired and all that kind of thing? How are we thinking about how we welcome, right? That's a big part of how you carry it forward. And that's not easy, and that costs money and it takes time. But those are the kinds of things. I will tell you, this is one thing that having served on the board of the West End Career Research Center, I feel like I can speak with some integrity to what my friends look for when they walk into a building. And one of the first things they look for is there a restroom where I feel safe, right? Is there an all-gender restroom? Is there signage that indicates that I get to be here? Here's the other thing I'm going to say. Churches who are reconciling in Christ to carry that message forward need to be serious about thinking about leadership. It's not enough that you have members who might be LGBTQ, but are they welcome to serve on council? Are they welcome to be parts of committees and teams in a variety of different ways? Are they invited to speak in front, to read lessons, do whatever, be an assisting minister, right? Are you open, and you have an awesome pastor, so I'm not suggesting this anytime soon. But would your congregation be open to calling somebody as a pastor or deacon who is LGBTQ, right? So those are all things that are part of that, taking it to the next step, continuing forward. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, we got another. Awesome.
Good job, Scott.
Probably just a little bit more beyond, are you open to having a member of the LGBTQ community serve in leadership? Are you also open to the idea that because of their life experiences, they may not have had opportunities to be leaders? And are you also willing then to support them and teach them how to be a leader? Because they want to do it.
Yeah.
But because of our society, they haven't maybe had the chance to participate in those things.
Well,
To help them be successful in being a leader.
David, I'm just gonna come back to you and say that as a pastor for the last 22 years, leadership development of any of our folks who want to be leaders in the church is highly important, absolutely. How do we support and come alongside folks to give them the best possible chance of success as being leaders? And I'm just gonna say, I have worked with folks that are like engineers and doctors and lawyers who come in to do leadership in a church, and it's like, what am I doing? You know, so that's a support that everybody needs, right? Yeah. Other questions? How are we doing on time?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Yes, oh yeah.
I'm just gonna ask everyone that's on the RAC team to stand up so that those who are visiting us today know that we are very approachable. We want to hear from you.
That's a great idea.
And we appreciate you coming.
I'm the advisor.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your work in that. I know that takes time. It's been a process. So thankful for your work in doing that, yeah. Is there anything else? Well, let me just touch on one other thing. One of the things that came to us at Community of Christ Church in our working toward becoming reconciling in Christ was the question, but don't the scriptures say this? Right? And you know, there are definitely ways of interpreting scripture that can feel pretty negative, pretty anti our LGBTQ siblings. So I encourage you to, I understand you all read, or some of you read Unclobbered, right? So that's a good one. I'm gonna recommend another book. For those of you in your congregation who are really wrestling with this, who are really kind of holding on to that one interpretation of scripture that says that it's not okay to be LGBTQ and be in the church and be a Christian. This is a book called Changing Our Mind. And by the way, if you do get this book, get the definitive third edition, because it has extra stuff in it after the author has spoken in different places, and it has a study guide. So Changing Our Mind by David Gashi. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. The thing I want you to know about David Gashi is that he, for much of his professional life, has been like top of the line evangelical ethicist. Evangelical ethicist. So for those folks who might say, well, your books are being written by folks that are part of the liberal mainline denominations, this book is phenomenal. He goes through all of the clobber passages that Colby Martin talks about in his book, from the lens of a biblical scholar and ethicist. I can tell you that he has been uninvited from lots of the groups in his evangelical community because of writing this book. But he stands by, he changed his mind. He literally changing our mind. He changed his mind. And he didn't do it because he was quote unquote caving to culture. He did it because he was doing the hard work of biblical scholarship that led to that. So I highly recommend this one. Any last questions before we wrap up? Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Coming out here, David, to be with us, and it's just really, really helpful. Just treat, especially right now with the political climate that we're in right now, we want to be sure that we are there and standing with our LGBTQ plus siblings in solidarity, creating safe spaces. Anybody have any last thoughts? All right, we're gonna get ready.
Maggie.
This is just a message to everybody in the congregation. I am gay and I've been here for a year, and I did do one of the readings, so you guys all welcome me and invited me to do something out of my element, and I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You guys have become a family, so thank you.
We love you, Maggie.
We love you, Maggie.
I just wanted to kind of go off with that too, for, Maggie being able to go up there and feel comfortable. I do want to remind everyone though, it's not her job to have to come out and try to, make you be okay with her. It's all of us job to make everyone, make sure she feels welcome, and everyone else.
Yeah.
And that goes for all the time, because we're the one who has to make the change, so.
Good, excellent.
That's so well said, and reminds me of one other thing I did want to tell you. Over the course of my time at Community of Christ Church over those 13 years, there were opportunities to welcome new members into our congregation. And in preparation for that, this is something that I said over and over again, maybe even ad nauseum, to my congregation. We are not inviting those folks in to become just like us. When we invite them in, we invite them to change us. We will be a new community every time new people join. That's true for people across the spectrum, no matter who they are, who they love, who they vote for, et cetera, their presence in your community will change you. So thank you for saying that, that's so important. Yeah, thank you.
Let's have a hand for
I'll leave these books out until after worship.
Also, let's have a hand for everybody who contributed to this wonderful breakfast.
Yeah, right, it's like, she's well trained.
I know.
Well trained.
Exactly.